Well, top of the muffin to you guys. This is Jake. Welcome to another Land Effects webinar. Want to welcome everybody here joining us live and want to welcome everybody watching in the future. We have a great little webinar for you today, talking about a lot of tools at an early design stage by none other than PHatch, one of our great masterminds here at Land Effects. Before we get started, wanted to just do a little bit of housekeeping items and let you know that this is going to be recorded. If you want to watch anything back a little bit later today, we should have that up on the website for you. And we do definitely want questions. If you guys have any questions, use that Q&A there in your little panel there, and feel free to chat amongst yourselves as well. But please keep those questions in the Q&A box. Without any further ado, I'm going to turn this right over to Paul.
All right, thank you, Jake. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another webinar. My name is Paul, as Jake said, and I'll be narrating today's presentation. And today we'll just be going through some neat tools for preliminary design work. The point of this is to not get bogged down in the details and just quickly come up with a broad plan. Because of this, we're going to take some quick satellite imagery and roughly scale it to our needs, and then place some conceptual stuff on top. So here's the outline for the day. And I just wanted to start off with finding and using a satellite image. Then I'll have a couple of demonstrations. The first one will be using our zoning tools to kind of map out different zones for site development. And then we'll jump into another demonstration where I'll solely focus on concept graphics and basically create a quick cost estimation for a project. For both of these, I'll also show up, quickly setting them up for print. And then also I'll demonstrate saving these items that we'll be adding into our projects into a project template so that you can use them later on. So there are a few sources for satellite imagery. And here's just a few that I found. These are all free sources from what I gather. But the one that I like best is probably Google Earth or Google Earth Pro. Has a lot of capabilities, and it's free for everyone to use, and it's super intuitive and easy to use. If you don't want to download new software, you can use Google Earth through like a Chrome browser, so you don't even have to install anything on your computer, and that uses the same satellite imagery as Google Maps. And then here's just a few other that I found, and there's plenty more, as well. So basically, you can use whatever satellite imagery you want. I'm just going to be showing Google Earth here just because it's so accessible and easy to use. And just a couple of quick ways that you can grab these satellite images. The fastest way probably is just to take a screenshot. If you have a high DPI and large monitor for your computer, you can pretty much go to any satellite imaging software or a web page and zoom into a place that you want, as long as there's something that you can reference for scale, and just take a screenshot. And then if you're using Google Earth Pro, which I'll show here in just a second, you can actually save out an image. And this is really great for creating pretty large resolution images, no matter what resolution your screen is. So let me just show an example of each of these real quick. I think I have here. I just went to earth.google.com. You can also go to maps.google.com, and basically you have the Earth here, and You can zoom in with your mouse wheel and find a spot that you want to take a screenshot of. So say we wanted this little area. As we zoom in, you want to get the whole area in your site plan or in your view here. And since I'm working on a Mac, I'm just going to hit, I believe it's the Option Shift 4. And it's going to give me this little window that I can draw over my image and take a screenshot of this. And when I'm doing this, I want to make sure that I'm grabbing this scale bar at the bottom. That way, when I take it into AutoCAD, I know I can use that as a reference to scale up my image. One other thing I wanted to note on here is that there are different options for different things to display on the map. So you might have these different road signs and places of business and whatnot. And when I like to take these screenshots, I kind of like to leave them blank. But if you want to keep, say, the borders, labels, and places, you can select this exploration tab here. Just to, you have some options for what you want to show in your satellite image. But what I actually recommend doing is using Google Earth Pro, which is something you have to download. But here it is. Largely the same satellite imagery, but as I said before, you can save out an image, so you can get a much higher quality, higher resolution image from this, no matter what monitor size you have. So in one of my examples that I'm going to be showing some zoning on, I'm going to be looking at this area. This is in San Luis Obispo. These circular patterns or objects in the ground here, those are where gas tanks used to be, or oil tanks. And in the early 20th century, they caught fire and basically turned this into a barren wasteland that has been kind of passed around through different gas companies, and now is in the process of being cleaned up and soon to be developed. And so I just thought I would use this as an example to place some zoning onto and how you can use that. But anyways, so once I have my area that I want to be drawing on within my view, and I've turned off my different photos and 3D buildings and terrain, because this is going to be a flat, basically kind of a impromptu base plan. I don't want to have any of those weird 3D buildings that Google puts in here. So I turned off all the different options. And if I want to in CAD, I can label the streets and stuff. And then up here, this button here is the Save Image button. Click that and you'll get some different options here. I recommend using the maximum resolution available, and then click on your computer. So a very quick way to get satellite imagery from Google Earth Pro. And if you want more in-depth information about using images in CAD, check out Jake's recent webinar on the subject. It looks like this was done back in January, and he goes through the nitty-gritty and all the details of using images in CAD. So check that out if you want more information on using images. So let's move on to our couple of demonstrations. So as I said, I'm looking at this sort of area that's soon to be ripe for development. And once it's cleaned up and basically sanctioned to be developed on, how are we going to zone this out and basically create like a view of what we're going to put there. So we can use our zoning tools and our concept tools to kind of map this out. So we have a direction for development. So let's go into CAD and see what that would look like. So here I am in FXCAD, and I'm going to want to start a new drawing. And I want to import this image. But before I do that, I want to make sure that my drawing is set up properly. So let's start by checking my drawing units. I know that I want to be working in feet. So I'm going to set this to decimal feet here. And I'm just going to set a plot scale right off the bat. I already know what this is. You don't have to set the plot scale right away, but you will want to set that up before you start placing any of these areas. So I'm going to stick with 1 inch equals 500 feet because it's a pretty big area. And then I need to attach one of those images that I saved from my satellite software. So the way that I do it is I always just type image attach and press enter. Alternatively, you can open up your XREF manager and go to this little drop down here and choose the attach image. It's the same thing for, does the same command here, image attach. And so here's this satellite image that I saved from Google Earth. And I just want to click open. And I'm just going to leave the settings as they are because I'm going to specify where the insertion is and what the scale is after I place it. So I'm just going to drop that in. It doesn't matter how I scale it right now because I'm going to change that scale right away. So just click to place it in and click again so that it gets past the manual scaling part of that. And then now we want to actually scale it so that this scale bar at the bottom actually measures out to 2,000 feet. And since I am using feet as my drawing units, I know that I basically just need to blow this up so that this is 2,000 units wide. So to do that, it's fairly simple. Just select the image and type scale, or SC for short. Press enter. First thing you want to do is specify the base point. So you can specify 0, 0, or you can just click on the image somewhere. I'm going to move the corner to 0, 0 after I scale it. So I'm not too concerned with that at the moment. So I'm just going to click to specify that base point. And then instead of manually dragging out to scale it, I want to click the R key for reference down there at the bottom and press enter. And it's going to ask me to specify the reference length. And so that's the length of the item for reference, which is going to be the scale bar. And instead of typing in what that length is, I'm just going to use my mouse and click on the 2 corners of the scale bar. Starting on the left, going to the right, clicking again. And now it says to specify the new length for that. And so I know that that should be 2,000 units or 2,000 feet. I'll press enter. And it blew up this image that I have so that it should be roughly to scale. Now, because I am using a raster image and I'm not snapping to the exact points of 2,000 feet, it's not going to be super precise. But for conceptual design and zoning, being able to quickly get out a preliminary zoning plan or a concept plan, it's good enough for that use. And I'm just going to move this corner over to 0, 0. So now I have a scaled image in here that I can start drawing on. And so what do I want to do with this area? I know that I'm looking at sort of this area here to develop on. And so I might want to start with some sort of site inventory and site analysis stuff, not like a full analysis of the entire site, but just to get some key points down, mainly, the main arteries of circulation or the highly used roads here. This is Broad Street and Tank Farm and South Higuera. So I'll probably want to draw those out and then, maybe point out some different locations that kind of have an effect on where the zoning is going. So to start putting stuff in like that, you first want to start a project, which is going to hold all of the data behind the different zones and concept graphics that we're going to be using. So I'm just going up to FX admin to the project list, and I'm just going to click on new and call this something unique. Stay in cat, there we go. Web example. And assign it a preference set. And the one that I'm using here is just our imperial preference set. And since I don't have a template yet, I'm not going to base it on a template. And click OK. And OK again. And so let's start by adding in some concept lines to show some roads, but also I know that there is a bike path over here and also a bike path right up here, but there's not really a good connection to those two bike paths. So let's start by mapping out some of the roads, and I'm going to use concept graphics for that. That's just over here in your FX site ribbon, concept. And I want to use lines for this. So let's add in a new concept line for the existing roads. I'm just going to use the solid filled line. And at this point, I can give it a name. So I might just call it existing roads, or I don't know, main circulation, or whatever you want to call it. You can also put in some notes on what it is, so that when you run a schedule, you'll get those notes in there. And then I'm going to give it a width as well. And that's just how wide the line is going to be. So let's just say 25 feet wide. They're existing roads. I don't really want to assign a cost to them. But down here, we have a little preview that it's the solid line. And then I can change the color of the line. And I'm going to go with like a yellow, so it really stands out. And I can even add a photo. So if I had been to the site, or if I used Street View on Google Maps or Google Earth to take a look at the street, I can take a screenshot of that and then add that photo in here, so you have a reference for that in the schedule. And I know that I did take a picture from Google of Tank Farm with some traffic on it. So let's just add that in there as an example. So now we have a road, has a photo, and this is all the information that's saved into your project data. Click OK. And now I can start mapping out these roads just real quick. One way you can do that is to click place. And just down here, it says either select a polyline, but since there's no polylines in there, I just want to draw. So I'm going to hit the D key. I'm pretty sure you can just start clicking as well, as long as there's no lines underneath where you're clicking. And I'm just going to very quickly show where these main roads are. I'm going to press enter when done. And just map out that Broad Street, Tank Farm Road, and South Hagera. Good enough. And since a big part of this is that bike path, maybe I also want to show where the existing bike path is. So I'm going to use another line type concept graphic. I'm going to choose the circular representation here. Maybe just call it existing bike path. Obviously, you can call this whatever you want, maybe something a little more official, and give it a width as well. Since I'm working in such a big scale, the wider the better, I think, just to make it more clear. And since this is conceptual, it doesn't have to be super accurate. So 25 feet, just so we can see it, and make it a nice bright magenta. So let's show where that is. So there's one right here. Kind of goes through this little park right next to our sewage treatment facility, which is real nice on a bike ride. And it spits you out right there in the worst intersection in town. But we can ignore that. So we want to connect these two bike paths. And then there's one up here, kind of hard to see on the satellite image. So I want to just show it as it exists currently. So we have these two bike lanes, and I just want to kind of show where a proposed bike path might go. So in addition to these existing items, maybe you want to create a new one for that proposed bike path. And very quickly set it up here. Maybe add a photo of what the bike path should look like. Bike path example. Yeah, it should look something like that. And this time, I'll show that what it looks like to just draw a polyline. And so maybe you want to continue going down here. This goes next to some railroad tracks. And then it looks like maybe you can cut over on this street and continue at this nice safe intersection. And then maybe you'll kind of meander through this basically conservation space or green space. So if that was going to be my proposed bike path, I just drew a polyline for it. I can now click on place and then select the polyline. And if you're using one of these concept lines that isn't just the straight solid line, you do get the option to place arrows at the end. You don't have to, but you can. And so now we've mapped out that. One other thing I wanted to show with concept graphics in a plan like this is maybe you want to have different viewpoints to show off some of the existing site. And you can do that real quick with the viewpoint area here. So I have an image that I also took from Google Maps, the street view of this existing bike path entrance or exit, depending on which way you're going. And this one, and then also just a couple from around the site. So let's say I want to put in just a reference photo for this bike path entrance. Just go to new viewpoint. Let's see. Bike path north and assign it a photo. And with this tool, I can now just place this little block here and then point the arrow in the direction of where the camera was facing when the photo was taken. And right there. Now, when I run a schedule, I can see that, you know, that's what that entrance looks like. So let's move on from concept graphics and show a little bit of zoning real quick. And let me there we go. All right. So I just wanted to pull up a reference real quick. So with zoning, you're going to be placing hatch areas to represent different zones. And much like with, you know, our concept areas or other areas, you know, you manage these within a management box. So it's like the zoning management box. To add a new area, you just click on the new button. And it's going to take you to these sort of basic standard zoning area colors according to the APA. So maybe the first thing I want to map out is a public facility. So I'm just going to choose that. If you want to edit these colors to your own liking, you can either click on an existing one and click edit and go through that process, or you can click on the blank box at the end and create your own colors for this. I'm just going to stick with the default. And I'm just going to call this public facilities. And again, I can give it any notes if needed. You can provide a density. And from there, click OK. And now to place this into the drawing, you just click that place button. And you can either select a predefined closed polyline, or you can draw your own boundary line. So I'm thinking this corner here would be a good spot for public facilities. Hit that D key to start drawing. And just start mapping this out. Maybe I'll start here. And maybe as this develops, I want to shift, that area just so I get the right, amount of square footage. Maybe when I'm putting in housing, there's different densities that the city or the county are requiring for this. So you can, after you place this, start fudging around with it to get the right numbers according to the schedule. Now, you may notice that the outline of the area has shown up, yet the color that I assigned to this area is not showing. That is because our hatches by default are thrown to the back of the drawing order, which means that it falls underneath this image. So there's a couple ways to combat this. One way would be to select the image and either in properties change the transparency, or keep the transparency by layer, which is probably the recommended route to go, and actually create a new layer for that image and put that image on that layer, and then change the transparency of the image, say to 50%. That way you can actually see what's going on underneath the image. If you assign the transparency to this, but you're not seeing anything underneath, make sure you have this transparency display turned on down here at the bottom. And the other way to combat this is once you've drawn out your areas, just select the image, go to draw order, and then send to back. And that'll send it underneath anything that's in the drawing currently. So from here, it's just about, creating new zones. So maybe I want to create my zone for open space. We call it conservation/open space. Click OK. And maybe I want to draw my polylines out beforehand. So maybe around this park is all going to be, conservation space, depending on where the actual perimeter of this site is. So you can just draw a polyline, press C at the end of your polyline to close it, or C and enter. And then you can just click on that polyline when done. Oops. Let's use the right zone here. And start laying out your zones. For residential areas, you might want to add those densities in there. And so now I just want to open up this DWG. This is, further down the road. I spent a little bit of time mapping out this fantasy zoning map as to how, this could potentially be developed. Obviously, this is not my expertise, so it doesn't make it a good zoning map. But anyways, the tools are there should you need them. And so, as you can see here, I've placed different viewpoints at places of interest. The different bike path entrances, this intersection here along Tank Farm Road. I've also mapped out, conservative open space or conservation space, as well as some residential areas, office zones, business park zones, and park space. Basically using the same steps I did before. And so once you get your zoning plan kind of where you want it to be in that stage of development, then you probably want to be able to print this out and show the schedules. So for this, you'll want to create a layout. You could XREF this into a new sheet if you have basically a sheet template already set up and you're using that XREF method to bring it in. Or since this is kind of a one-off drawing, at least for this example, you can just set up a layout in the same drawing. So here I have a page that I set up. It's just a 24 by 36 inch sheet. I gave it sort of the defaults PDF plotter, our default CTV settings, turned on plot transparency. And I just want to add a viewport. So I'm going to use MView, sort of the old school AutoCAD way. Draw a window. And I want to double click within the viewport to activate it. And then use the plot scale tool up here and set the active viewport scale to that plot scale. And then from there, I want to just run a couple of schedules to show what's going on in there. So for zoning, I've already set these up. You just press the schedule button and click OK to that. And then place that schedule onto the sheet. And you see here that it's got the acres. And if you're working in metric, you can switch that over to metric if you're using basically a metric plot scale, and it'll measure in hectares. And also for the residential areas, we have basically the density for those. And we also put in some concept graphics. So I'll also want to go to my concept graphics dialog here and click schedule. And for this, we're not doing any cost at this step. So basically I just want to show quantities and photos. Click OK. And click to place that upper left corner. And you get something like this. Got your proposed bike path, 2-lane, yada, yada is the description that I put in for that one. Whatever description you want to add in there. And then these different viewpoints that I added. This is the north bike path entrance with debris on it, and the south bike path entrance. And here's just an image from that tank farm road looking at the site. So very quick to make this. I think I spent, I want to say maybe half an hour just drawing this out. And that was also just, making everything my project, or adding all these objects into my project rather. So it took a little bit of time, but it would have taken even less time had I had these items saved into a template for later use. So the way to do that is once you set up like a zoning plan or a concept graphics plan, you can go up into FX admin, click on this project list, and just save the project as a template. And what this does, if you don't know, it just makes a copy of this project and saves it as kind of a read-only type of project, so that you can't use the template as a project and make changes to it, but you can make a new project based off the template. So click save the template, maybe call this zoning. And it'll show up down here in your templates location. And basically what that allows you to do is let's say I had just imported this image and I had a blank project, or I was starting a new project. I can click on new, give it a unique name. I can now select a template, say zoning, and the zoning and concept graphics are saved into the ref notes item here. So make sure that that is selected and click OK. Okay, and so my different concept graphics come in, as well as my zoning objects here. So I can now just very quickly go in and hit place and draw in this business park, wherever that might be. And of course, once you've set up your sheet, you probably want to print it. So just hit Control P, or go down here, right click, and then choose the plot option. Click OK to this. And fairly quickly, you get a nice big sheet with your zoning plan on it. Pretty easy. Before we move on to the next example, are there any questions on this?
Yes, in fact, there is. And I'll take this time to remind everybody to start asking questions if you have them, just so we can make sure we get them taken care of. First is more of a comment. David is actually saying, this is great, helpful lesson. He's going to also recommend saving the plan and locking that satellite XREF. That sometimes also works as well to keep things at the bottom. As well as sometimes it's a graphical thing. It's not even a draw order thing. So even typing a regen all to kick that image back to where it is sometimes helps. So there are a few tricks there for sure. This one comes from Betsy, and she's asking if all concept graphics are on their own layer, or should we be creating separate layers, of paths, buildings, and stuff like that. So can you maybe show how they're kind of being placed on what layers, and maybe what you might recommend doing?
So here is our concept line layer. Anything with the CNCP little tag in here in the layer name is going to be a concept item. So you can see what objects are on the layers based on that. So the way I guess our structure is it's the sort of what the item is, and then so LK is block, like landscape block, and then anno is short for annotation, and then label, and then the size, or what the designation for that label is. So this is for like a mask of the label. So this is the line graphics concept line, or landscape graphics concept line. And this is down here, we have the block graphics concept, and this is the size of that line type. So anything with the CNCP would be concept, and you can basically, if you want to organize them so that they're all grouped together, I would recommend creating a new group filter, which allows you to organize your layers pretty effectively. So maybe like concept graphics here, and then any layer that has that CNCP in it, you can select those and drag those into this group layer, so you can then isolate those layers specifically.
And I will also add, it's not going to, if you've got several concept line types, it's not going to put each one of those individually on separate layers. They will be all a part of that one layer that LandFX does create. So if you want them split out for some reason into every individual one, that's definitely going to be a more manual thing, but I don't know that you would need to ever really go that far. So it is going to bundle them into generic layers for you that way. So, and then one last one, if you could just go over the zoning legend one more time, just how you placed it, what are the options and stuff.
Sure. So once I've set up my different zoning, sorry, you said zoning, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So open up that zoning palette here, or your zoning manager. And this is where you've set up all of your different zones. And next to place, there's a schedule button. So click that. And then we don't have a table option for this, but we do have the drawing style, or you can export it to a spreadsheet if you want to crunch the numbers or do what you will with that. But I just chose drawing, so since I'm placing it in here. Okay. And then just like with all of our other schedules, you specify where that upper left corner is and you click there and it drops it in. The acres is basically a measurement of the area. The density is in the data of the zone item. So for low density residential, I added, what is it, 5 dwellings per acre, I believe. And and so since I have an entry there for density, it'll then calculate how much that is in the schedule and then total those out for you.
Awesome. Thank you. I think you're good to move on.
Okay. Oop. All right, so for our next scenario, I'm gonna move on from zoning and go into just a very quick concept, I guess, design. But basically, we're gonna conceptually develop a landscape for a potential client. I guess the scenario is that someone has contacted you and asked, what would it cost me if you were to add in these things that I want? Because right now, my yard is not developed yet, and basically I want to add in some specific items like a large patio gathering space, a pool. I want to add in some planting buffer or screening to add some privacy to what looks like a hot tub here. And maybe they're avid tennis players, so they want to add in a tennis court as well. They just kind of want to go all out, and they're just kind of looking for a ballpark of what that's going to cost them. So with concept graphics, you can very quickly throw that together and provide them with an estimate so that they kind of know what they're looking at if they're trying to go through with it. So let's take a look at that in CAD. I'm going to close this zoning example real quick. I'm going to start a new drawing. Actually, this time, if you guys are using FXCAD, if you go to New, we have these drawing templates already set up, which are pretty nice because since I'm going to be working in decimal feet, I can just select this template and open it. And then I don't have to really worry about setting units or anything like that. So I'm going to just use that instead of going through and setting up my drawing again. And just like before, we're going to add in a satellite image of that house. So just image attach is the command. Go to the image that I took from Google Earth, drop it in. And once again, I'm going to use that scale bar at the bottom to scale it. specify the base point, and then press R for reference. And click my scale bar length for reference. And it says that it's 100 feet, so I'm just going to type 100, press enter. And we've roughly scaled this. There we go. So for this, we're not going to do any zoning. We're just going to stick strictly with concept graphics. So let me pull open my little cheat sheet on my other screen real quick. There we go. All right, so we're going to basically repeat what we did before, where we set up a new project. Since I don't have a template for this yet, give it just a unique name, concepts, example, assign it a preference set. All right, so based on this fake conversation that I had with this potential client, I know that they want a few things around the house. So with concept graphics, I can very quickly throw those in. And I'm going to start with areas. So one of the first things that they requested was a pool. And you can use concept areas for that. And just draw an area and basically assign a cost to the square footage of it. That would, somewhat accurately represent the cost installation of a pool. And when I was kind of playing with the numbers, I found that $100 a square foot kind of worked for the size of pool there and what you might be realistically looking at for a pool installation, at least based on my Google research. I'm not entirely sure if it is super accurate, but hopefully you would know if you were doing this. And so just like before, I'm setting up, a title. I can add in some notes for a schedule. I'm not going to go into depth because I don't want a volume for this. I just want a square footage count or calculation. And I can also attach a photo to this, just something that represents kind of the style of what they're looking for. So there's kind of your generic rectangular pool. Okay. And then since I don't want to measure out the pool, one thing you can do is use our plan graphics as reference. So for the pool, I actually want to use one of our plan graphics pools here. And I'm just going to choose this block just to place it in there so I have something to draw around. And also leave on the plan, since there's no data behind this block, it's just a graphical representation and doesn't affect the calculations whatsoever. So maybe that's where I want the pool to be. And I want to just place my pool area around this. So I'm going to use that draw option and just very quickly get a rough square footage of what a pool might take up. So that's in there. Can't see it because the image was on top, but now we have that. And then we might move on to the hardscaping or the patio space. So I'm going to use another area and choose one of these here. Maybe we're doing unit pavers for this patio. Okay. Give it a name. Add some notes to it if you have, an idea of pavers involved or any kind of notes, you can add those in. And let's say this is about $15 a square foot. And this time I'm going to draw a little area for where I want that patio to be with just the Polyline tool. So maybe it's going to extend out here, kind of go around the pool. don't know, maybe continue like this. This is up to you how it fits in here. Press C to close that polyline, and then press place from the patio space. I want to exclude the pool in this, which is why I drew that polyline first, so that I can press M now for multiple. And what that does is that allows you to select an outer boundary of an area and any inner islands or inner boundaries that'll be excluded. And since I don't want the patio space to be included in the pool area, I'm going to exclude the pool area. So I'm pressing M, click that outer boundary, and then click that inner boundary and press enter. And so that patio has now gone everywhere except for on that pool. Since I can't see it, I'm just going to add a little transparency to this image so I can see what's going on underneath. All right. So that's a very quick way to add in those items. Another thing they requested are some basically planting buffer or planting screen. So we have a color for that as well. Again, you can adjust these colors to your needs. Let's quickly just add this in. Let's say this is $12 a square foot. And I can place that in just like I did before. Just draw a quick little buffer around here. So yeah, let's just place this in. And as I'm adding more items in, I kind of want to adjust the shape of this or the size of it. You could redraw the area, or you could select, the boundary and kind of move these vertices or the line segments. But we have something called PHatch, which stands for PHatch, which is a cool tool for something like this, so that you can start basically painting this hatch around to get it to fit the way you want it to fit. And the way you use that is just to type PHatch and press enter. And then you're going to select the hatch that you want to paint. And it gives me this brush that I can start clicking around in my drawing and placing that hatch. The brush does have to connect with the outer boundary of the hatch, but I can just somewhat quickly start adjusting the size of this buffer. You can change the size of the brush with the S key for smaller brush sizes or the W key for larger brush sizes. And you can press B as in boy and take a look at the different brush shapes that we offer. So if you want more of a squared edge brush, you can do that. If you do have a non-circular brush, you can rotate the brush with the D and A keys. And if you want to subtract from this area, you can press the tilde key or the key that's to the left of the 1 key and kind of move this area around. Maybe you place a schedule and the area is a little too large, maybe it costs a little too much, and you just need to cut it back a little bit. So you can start adjusting this area so that it fits your needs in the project. Let's say that's our little buffer. We did show lines already, but I'll go through that real quick. Again, we're just going to place a decomposed granite path from the outside driveway to the backyard. I'm just going to use this square filled line to represent that. Give it a width. Let's say it's 4 feet wide. You can add in your 4 foot wide DG path or whatever notes you want to put in there. And let's say this costs that much, $10 a square foot, and give it a color that represents decomposed granite. And I can just very quickly draw this this line item that kind of goes around the house and maybe goes to a tennis court over here. The main point of this is to get sort of rough shapes, rough lines with actual costs behind them, so we can get that cost estimation real quick, and just build out this concept drawing here. So like I did last time, I kind of went through this already and mocked up what it might look like after, just a few, probably again, maybe 30 minutes of just quickly mocking this out. And I came up with this. We've got some screen buffer, some medium level planting, a synthetic lawn, tennis court, pool. This node here is a outdoor kitchen, since that's something that you would assign a cost to as a whole. I decided a node might represent that well. So I just went into nodes and clicked new, selected the graphic that would represent that, and gave it the name outdoor kitchen. The width is just how wide the symbol will be, but the cost is per block that you place. And I gave it a photo of an outdoor kitchen just as an example. So basically what I've done is I've placed in here sort of all the things that the client said they kind of want to have, so that I can get a rough cost estimate to them real quick. And so what that looks like when you actually put it on a sheet and run a schedule is this. So I once again set up a sheet. This time I put a title block in there, and a viewport, and I scaled it. But by just clicking on that schedule button, you'll get your concept graphic schedule options here. And you could include the quantity. If this is xrefed in, or if you have concept graphics on an xref, you can include the xrefs and it'll count those as well. I'm not really working with anything besides the image, so I don't really need that. But I want quantity, photo, and cost. Click OK. And to take a look at what this display is like, we have an example of a planting buffer or screen, how much, what the area is, what the sort of unit cost is, and then a total for that. Same with the patio space and pool and different planting areas, tennis court, synthetic lawn, the different pathways. These are measured out linearly, so like based on how long each path is. So you want to consider that in the cost. And then the outdoor kitchen here. And then at the bottom, you get a nice total that you could very quickly just send this over to that person. They can kind of see at, what kind of design direction you might be thinking if they were to go ahead with it, but also a very rough estimation of, the cost. And if you do this once, I would recommend going over to FX admin and your project list and saving this as a template so that, if you get more people to call in and ask, what the cost of this project might be, you can just pull open, a new project with this template behind it and have these concept items ready to go. Maybe you need to add, one or two more, but more than likely, you'll probably be adding in patio spaces and planting areas, and pools are pretty common as well. So you'll have those all ready to go if you need to use them. Concept. Yeah. Now we have a template of that, and I can hit Control P and print this out and send it over. And maybe this took an hour or so, but not super long to get a pretty fair cost estimate to a potential client. So any questions on that?
I think I was able to handle a few of them. One came in And this is, I think, one of the bigger ones that will definitely put us over time if we go too deep, but maybe you can give a little snapshot of where this would head. Once the concept plan is approved, can you turn this concept into a working plan, or do you need to redraw the items?
Well, at least in this case, because it's, I was going very quick and it's very rough. I would probably, once you start going into actual design, actually, figuring out, how the patio is going to lay out and the actual sizes of these things, you might want to redraw. But you can turn like line items from concept graphics into reference notes. And so there is a way to get that, basically go from concept to preliminary design, I believe would be the next step. And I went over this. Where's the web page? Here. Right here in 2018, basically when we first introduced the concept graphics, I did a full webinar on the some of the stuff we talked about already, setting up your concept lines and stuff. But then at the end, I went through connecting ref notes with concept items. So give that a view if you want to learn more information on that.
Well, that is all I've got. So again, I want to thank everybody for attending today and for all you guys' questions. And thanks, Paul. And you guys have a lovely Friday the 13th.
Thanks, Jake. Not to jinx it or anything.
No, it's a lovely sunny day. Everything will be fine.
All right. I'm sure it will.
Have a good weekend, guys.
All right. Thank you. Have a good weekend, everybody.